Are you ready to tackle the core issues of screens and social media use in your family? With my 3-week January reset, we're going to do exactly that. By the end, you'll have your own plan to set and maintain sensible guidelines and rules around your kids' screen and social media use. Welcome. My name is Liz Bandy, and after 30 years of research and teaching in the field of kids, teens, and media, I created Screen Control to help parents navigate the digital world in a way that meets their parenting style and their kids' needs. In this video, we'll kick off my January reset. It has 4 steps: review, pause, discuss, and reset. I'll explain each step, why it matters, and how you can get started with your family. In this video, we'll focus on steps 1 and 2. With this reset, we want to reduce the negative aspects of screen and social media use so we can enjoy the positive things they bring to our lives. To do that, we need to start with a really good understanding of where we are and the potential hazards in our family's use. That's why step 1 is the review. Here are the core questions you're going to ask of yourself and your family in this review section. How much time do you think that each of your kids spends on screens and with social media outside of schoolwork in a given day? I'm talking texting, scrolling, chatting, watching, playing, listening. If you add all of that up, do you really know how much time they're actually spending on their devices and on screens? According to research by Common Sense Media, teens spend a whopping 7 to 9 hours per day using screens for entertainment. And for tweens, that number is 4 to 6 hours. Another study by the Pew Research Center found that 46% of teenage respondents are almost constantly online. Are you shocked? Are you feeling pretty good because maybe that seems like way more time than your kids spend with screens and online? Well, first off, remember, there's no real such thing as the average kid because that's an aggregate of more and less time spent. But the one thing we can tell for sure is that over the last 10 years, there's been a dramatic increase in those average numbers. So use by kids and teenagers is definitely going up. Like there's even been a big increase in the last 5 years. All right, let's move on to our second area for review. How often do you pop in to see what shows your kid is watching, what YouTube channels, what games they're playing, and maybe with whom they're interacting? When was the last time you checked your teenager's social media accounts? Do you really know how many they have, if it's more than one? Who they're following, who's following them, who they've given permission to, who their friends are, the kind of content they're tracking and liking? Have you asked them to show you lately? These are the kinds of questions I want you to investigate during this review stage. It's designed to help you really get a sense of what's going on in your kids' screen and social media lives. But before we finish this step, there's one more set of questions. I want you to try to talk to your kids about, are there any times when they get frustrated or annoyed by their own use or think it's kind of getting in the way of their lives? Do they get annoyed when maybe their siblings or their friends are using? Do they get frustrated when you're distracted by your screens and they don't want you to be? Have that conversation with them and add that to the information we're gathering during this review stage. Of course, we can't shield our kids from 100% of the potential harms they might face when engaging with screens, online, or heck, in the world in general. We also can't monitor them every second of every day. But the thing I'm asking you to do in this review step is to set aside time right now to intentionally review what they are doing online, who they're doing it with, when and where they're doing it, so you have a really good sense of the current landscape of their lives online. Now, let me tell you about step 2, which is pause, and then I'll give you some tips on how to implement both steps 1 and 2 near the end of the video. So the pause step is a challenge, and it's one I've given to my first-year college students many times. Some of them refuse to take it at all. They think it's going to be too hard, but most of them at least give it a try, and some of those actually make it all the way through. In each case, one thing holds steady. Whether they refuse to participate, do part of it, or do the whole thing, everyone learns something about their engagement with screens and social media and the role they play in their lives. even if it's just that they can't imagine getting through a single day without social media. So now I'm challenging you to take a pause from screens and social media with your family. Exactly what that looks like is up to you. Based on your family's needs and what you learned in the review step, you're going to need to decide which devices to include in the challenge and how long it's going to last. Now, the default is no screens outside of school or work for a full week. I do realize, though, that can be pretty hard to implement and kind of lead to a lot of pain and frustration. So you can adjust the length of time that you have no screens. You could do it for 5 days during the week, but not the weekend. You could do it for an entire weekend, the whole time, no screens. You could do it no screens after school only, if that's what you want to do. I would recommend that you try to go for at least 3 days, because that seems to be a time when people are doing this, especially kids, they really start to notice a difference. They go from just being frustrated and upset and having no idea what to do with their spare time to kind of settling into a different rhythm. But you do what works for you. Another way you can modify the challenge is not in the amount of time you do it, but in what you choose to limit. So instead of no screens, you could decide no social media for anyone for the week, no video games, no YouTube. What you want to get out of this is for everyone in your family to kind of begin to notice just how much time and energy and attention their screens take, and maybe what other things they might be missing out on when they are constantly glued to a screen. Before you dive into these steps, I recommend that you do 4 things in preparation. First, have a conversation with your partner, co-parent, possibly a grandparent or caregiver, really anybody who has core responsibility for raising your kids with you. So have that conversation and make sure that you're all on the same page, that you understand what you're doing and what you're trying to achieve with it. Have them watch this video if they haven't already. Second, have a conversation with your kids also about what you're doing and why you're doing it. Now, this can happen during the review stage, if not before, but it should definitely happen before you start the challenge. The last thing you want to do is spring on your kids at the last minute. Surprise, no screens for the next 7 days. They may or may not get on board, but at least try to have that conversation and prepare them for what's coming. 3, you do need to prepare for the challenge itself. You need to let people know, as do your kids, if you're not going to be on social media, you're not even going to be texting, you're going to be unavailable at certain hours, your kids won't be gaming with their friends, whatever it is. Give everybody a heads up so that they know what's going on and they won't be frustrated or worried. Another great thing to do is to try to come up with a list of things to do to keep you and especially your kids entertained in what normally is screen time. Of course, that can be things like board games, sports, outside activities, going on an outing, maybe even having friends over. But if friends are over, try to insist that they also don't have their screens or aren't playing video games or whatever it is that you've decided to pause in the challenge. All right, the 4th thing that I want you to do in preparation for starting your reset is probably the most difficult. It's quite possible that during the review phase, you're going to hear or see that your kid is engaged with something or someone online that you're not so happy about for whatever reason. What I want you to try to do, and I want you to set yourself up for this ahead of time, is not react in the moment. The review phase is for gathering information. So unless you see or hear something that is illegal, could cause physical harm or death or something like that, unless it's really, really serious and immediate, I want you to just take it in and set it aside. Why? You want your kids to be on board with this process. And if you kind of fly off the handle or react very strongly to something that they're doing or engaging with online, it's very likely that you're going to shut them down and they're going to get defensive, and then they're not going to be on board for the rest of the process. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to ignore that issue or that behavior forever. It's just during steps 1 and 2, because step 3 in discuss is where we'll start to deal with that, okay? Just asking you to kind of have a plan in place, or be aware that you might need to take a breath, walk away, and not address things right in the moment if you can. All right, you have everything you need now to get started on the 3-week January reset. If you can complete the review and pause challenge before the next video comes out next week, great. But if you're catching up with us, if you can't fit it into your schedule, that's totally fine. You can go through these things at your own pace. They don't even have to be done in January. All right, so who's ready to begin this January reset? If you are, why don't you put a comment down below letting us know that your family's about to begin the journey. And don't forget to subscribe so that you get the next videos in the reset. See you soon.